Thank you, members. I'd like to start with the webcasting introduction. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of subsequent repeated viewing, with copies of the recording being made available for those that request it. By being present at this meeting, it is likely that the recording cameras will capture your image, and this will result in your image becoming part of the broadcast. You should be aware that this may infringe your human and data protection rights. If you have any concerns, then please speak to the webcasting officer. Members, I don't need to remind you, do I, that when you're speaking, turn your microphone on, and when you're finished, turn your microphone off. If we can then move forward on to apologies for absence.
None received, Chairman.
Okay, I have apologies from Councillor Sunga, and I believe from Councillor Avey, maybe either late.
Councillor Burrows.
And Councillor Burrows.
I always like to be helpful, Chairman. Are you looking for any substitutes?
Oh, no, not for this meeting, I'm afraid, Councillor Murray. Okay, very good try there. If I can also announce that we have some of our officers coming into us this evening via Zoom. So Andrew Small is present, but on Zoom this evening and ready to help and assist on the finance papers if required. Lorraine Mills is here to help me with the equalities policy in the absence of Darshan Sunga, and Sasha Jevons is here to deal with some of the quality issues, and of course the ever-present Tom Khan is now able to join us at every single meeting so that he can make sure that our PR is exactly how he wants it. Oh, Tom's down the other end, but he's on Zoom as well. So he's in person and in Zoom. That's doubly intent to be of service. Okay, if we can go for the minutes of the last meeting. Oh, sorry, declarations of interest first of all. Any declarations of interest? I believe I have a non-pecuniary declaration of interest, and I will be remaining on item 9 as the person who did the branding is known to me. But I'll just make that as a non-pecuniary interest, since I had no involvement in the procurement or otherwise in this case. Minutes of the last meeting, can I take those as being agreed? Thank you very much. Any additional reports of portfolio holders? Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to report that the main modifications finished on the 23rd of November, and we were anticipating 2 weeks to get the works in order to send to the inspector. That work now is almost complete. There's a final review about to take place of the wording going to the inspector. I do believe that some members of the public have raised concerns over the maximum amount of words on any response being limited to 300 words. We were instructed by the inspector to have a look at those reports that came in, summarise them into 300-word bites, which we have done. However, the inspector is being made fully aware of all 4 reports that have come in, and they are being sent to the inspector as a large attachment for her to go through at her leisure. I thought it would be wise just to advise members that that's what's been going on, because I know there's been a few rumours of my comments have been redacted. They have been redacted into a small bite-sized 300-word piece at the request of the inspector. It's not our request. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the clarity on that point, because I know a number of people have raised concerns. Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick update from me. That last week I attended the Essex County Council Housing Refugee Task Force on behalf of Epping Forest. These are weekly meetings at the moment, but it was an opportunity to meet with leaders from across different groups and discuss the current situation with the Afghan refugees. Epping Forest District Council, as mentioned at the last meeting, have offered up 2 homes. We've got 2 homes ready, but they've yet to be used, but that's something that we're ready and awaiting to do. But the consensus around the table is that we should be, and this is across party, making sure that we provide the support needed for those coming in from Afghanistan, and calling on other councils to do what we've done here in Epping Forest and offer up a small amount of housing if they are able to, but also looking to the private sector to see if there's any opportunities available there. In terms of donations, I've had a number of members ask me about donations. When the donation points were initially announced, they were overwhelmed within 24 hours, which is good to see how many people support the refugees locally. But unfortunately, because of that support, there wasn't anything locally in Epping Forest. But I am working with Voluntary Action Epping Forest to ensure when that is needed that we can start that up. So that's my update. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to Councillor Murray.
I mean, is it in order for me to ask for a report from the portfolio holder? Even if they can't give it now, I can just give notice that I want a report.
If you give notice, and we'll do our best to assist.
Yep, it's only broken this afternoon. The LGA are saying that because of the competition for drivers and what the private sector is now doing to get drivers, there is a possibility of having difficulties in recruiting bin lorry drivers and gritter drivers, and I realise that's not an Epping Forest matter, but if we could have a report, either verbal or written, whether that's likely to affect Essex in terms of gritting and Epping Forest in terms of bin drivers. It was on Sky News this afternoon.
Thank you for a good point raised, and we will look into it and come back to members with an update. Councillor Sam Kane. Councillor Murray.
Sorry.
Just a quick point on the reference to the gritters at Essex. I attended a highways briefing this morning at Essex, and at this present time there is no problem with drivers as far as the gritting lorries are concerned.
Okay, thank you very much. We will keep a watching brief and we will come back. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Chairman. In the absence of my colleague, Councillor Avey, the position around bin lorry drivers has come up at the Waste Partnership Board. BIFA are aware of people standing outside their gates offering their drivers £1,000 to come and work for them right there and then. Last reported they weren't having any problems retaining their drivers, but clearly it is a concern. And tying into one of my reports later on, when we look at the budget for next year, the year after that we have the reletting of the waste contract. I fully expect these to give an upward pressure on that contract in the time.
Okay, thank you very much. Public questions and requests to address the Cabinet?
None, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, report of overview and scrutiny. Councillor Sartin.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, in fact, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee hasn't met since the 1st of July, and I did give an update on that meeting. We do have the meeting coming up tomorrow evening. The agenda is quite a full one, but does include an update on the climate change and sustainable transport issues, and also a COVID-19 update, which I think will be of particular interest. And we do still have the local high streets task and finish panel in abeyance at the moment, but that will be again discussed tomorrow night to decide whether or not it should be reinstated at this time or whether left for a longer period. And then we have the usual items of the cabinet business and looking at the terms of reference for the Stronger Place Select Committee. But I will report back on that meeting at the next Cabinet meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. It's going to be a busy agenda tomorrow evening. Members, moving on from now, in that case, item 8 is the equality policy. Members will have read the report before them. Obviously, this council has always been committed to their equality policy and continues to support it in the fullest way possible. I would assume that any members of the Cabinet have questions on this item? No? Councillor Phillip.
Chairman, not a question so much as a statement. I remember a number of years back when I was in charge of equality, back in the old days in the old directorates, and the challenges we had to actually get people understanding what equality actually meant, both in terms of our relationship with the public, but also in terms of how we encapsulate it in our reports. I'm very happy to see that has changed significantly over the past years, and now there is nobody bats an eyelid, for example, when we raise the rainbow flag once a year, which is a very positive thing. I welcome this item. I think it's something that we not only need to adopt, but we also need to make sure it's pervading the work that we actually do. And just reminding members that when it comes to reading reports, not just for Cabinet, but all reports to the Council, there is an equality section in there, and that is actually as important a part of the report as the report itself, and we do need to treat that with proper seriousness. I think this will actually help us to do a better job.
No, absolutely, completely agreed. Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. No problem with the policy. I just want to highlight the Cabinet a point I made at the Select Committee. Not a member of the Select Committee, but I attended for this item. Page 27 is the page I'm referring to. Just a couple of points, please, Chairman. I thought some of the wall profiles were really interesting, particularly the information about Grange Hill. I found that interesting. But I do want to take a Loughton view on this. I do tend to take an Epping Forest view, but I also want to take a Loughton view on this. And if you look at the table on page 27, it does confirm what we already knew. The two of the most socially deprived wards in our district are Loughton Alderton and Loughton Broadway. And I just want to make the point that the excellent initiatives that we've seen in Shelley, the excellent initiatives that we've seen in Waltham Abbey, I do think, I would hope within the next 12 to 18 months we would see similar types of initiatives in either Loughton Alderton or Loughton Broadway, because they quite clearly need them as much as the Paternoster ward in Waltham Abbey and the Shelley ward in Ongar. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, good point made and taken on board. Any other members with any questions, or can I agree this policy? Agreed? Okay. So then we move on to item 9, the branding for the civic offices. Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this has been through scrutiny. It's been the subject of some lively discussion in a number of meetings. And what we're looking at here is assigning an identity to the occupants of the ground floor of this building. Those occupants are, of course, FDC front-facing services and what we've dubbed the community hub services, which is all of our partner organisations who are now in a shared space. So, as I say, what we're looking to do is give that whole area an identity, hopefully to include the library at some time. And we've come down, after much debate, we've come down to two options, and we're looking to make a choice between the Civic or the Civic Hub. The general consensus from the Select Committee was the Civic wasn't appropriate, but the Civic Hub was an acceptable name. And I must admit, from my own perspective, I tend to agree. The branding itself was, further debate was on the costs associated with that. We're yet to get finalised costs, but the details are in the report, and we expect it to be at the lower end of the scale there. So, as I say, what we're looking for here is an acceptance of the branding exercise and a choice between the Civic or the Civic Hub. One final comment, if I may make. Recommendation number 3 makes reference to the Stronger Community Select Committee. It was in fact the Stronger Place Select Committee. So it's just a bit of a typo there, so my apologies for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members of the Cabinet? Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's only fair for me to say today that the space that we're looking to brand was actually utilised for the first time by the Community Culture and Wellbeing team for a Community Health and Wellbeing Day. It was an absolute, it was a fantastic day with more than 200 residents attending the very first session today, the Winter Warmer session, with 20 external agency partners showcasing the services that they offer. It was a proper example of how the space should be utilised, and just pass my thanks back to my team for what they put on today. In terms of the name, I must admit previously when talking about the civic offices, I would always refer to this space as the Civic Where's the meeting taking place? Happening at the Civic. It's just something that for me rolls easily off the tongue, and that would be my preferred option. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm relatively easy about the name. Like Councillor Patel, I have called the civic offices the Civic in the past, but I think hub, using the word hub within that probably alludes to some of its functions. Don't want to dwell too much on the branding tonight because I think Councillor Patel makes a really good point. Actually, we're not here, you know, the positive of this story is what the Civic Hub, or whatever it's going to be called, has achieved. Actually seeing the event here today with the communities team and actually seeing this modern open space. And we really did have a crystal ball almost two to 3 years ago now when we looked at reshaping this space. And actually I look forward to seeing it open up even more with potentially the library and becoming a real modern council offices which is fit for the 21st century in a post-pandemic world. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor John Philip.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I would definitely go with the Civic Hub as the approach. I think it's a little bit neater from an overall point of view. It identifies what it is. It's a hub for various places to come, and it's housed within the civic offices. So putting the two of them together, I think, makes a lot of sense. I'm not going to say a lot about the branding either. Just looking, because I didn't find it in the equality analysis, as to whether the colours are appropriate for people who may be visually challenged. In terms, I know they're being used to guide people in the right place, and not being visually challenged from a colour point of view myself, I don't know whether that is something that's a problem or not.
Brilliant. Well, I'm sure behind you, Susan Lewis will have an answer for you.
I certainly have, thank you. Yes, the branding, once we've agreed on which option we're going to go on the name, the Shore Trust will be ensuring that it's completely accessible for all. So once we've got the go-ahead, I'll hit the button on that tomorrow. So that's all taken care of.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sam Kane.
On the colour issue, I would just like to point out that the colours chosen reflect those that were chosen for the Civic Office refurb, and those were all looked at very carefully from the point of view of those with sight difficulties. So I'm comfortable that they will be correct, but it's best that we do check, of course. On the name, I just want to stress, from my perspective, the importance of differentiating between the 3 floors of this building. We've got the top floor, which has been let out, sublet, and is now earning revenue for the council. We have the first floor where the civic offices reside and all the back office functions take place. And we have the Civic Hub where all of our partners have access to this space and also our front-facing council services. So I think it is important that we do have that differentiation so that we know which part of the council we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. A few points, please. I wasn't able to get to the Select Committee, and I quite deliberately haven't listened to the debate because I didn't want to be... well, I know what they've decided, but I didn't want my views to be kind of alarmist or worked up by what other people had said, so that these are coming fresh from me. I think I can see a generational divide here, because the Civic absolutely appalls me, the idea of referring to it as the Civic. It just seems to be a slightly younger approach to things. That's what I'm picking up from what we've seen tonight. No disrespect to the older members of the Cabinet, but it is the younger ones that seem to be happy with the Civic. And I'm very much happier with the Civic Hub, because it tells you what it is on the tin, and it explains its function. So I do think the Cabinet should go with that. I would endorse the comments about the event today. Deliberately came in a little bit early to see what was going on. Obviously missed the stuff during the day, but even the tail end stuff was very impressive. Nothing that I wouldn't expect from Jill Wallace's team, I have to say. So that is really good. I mean, obviously, I would like an ongoing report about how many people, some of the more obscure but important organisations, are going on. I think the test of time is over a longer period of time, and I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Yeah. You know, how many are coming to to the benefits, how many people are coming to reuse on a Friday morning and so on over a long period of time. If I come to the more controversial views about my opinion, which I don't think will be endorsed by the Cabinet, we're told that later on in later papers, give or take, our budget is 16 to 17 million pounds. But it's amazing how attention then focuses on small amounts and whether we can justify small amounts. And I just have to say that in the current climate, with the current pressures on people's budgets and the decision that was taken on October the 6th, vis-a-vis universal credit, I've had a lot of really negative comments about spending nearly 20,000 or certainly 15,000, but could be up to just over 19,000 on this rebranding. Yes, we've got to pay now for what work has been done in terms of the branding exercise. Hindsight is a beautiful thing, and I don't know when this decision was ever made to go in for this branding, because if I had been at the meeting where that decision was made, and I might have been without realising it, but I can't remember being at the meeting, I would have suggested that this was an ideal opportunity to invite our college and A-level graphic design and art students to be involved in the design. A, it would have been a lot cheaper. B, I understand the beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but I can't help thinking the end result would have been better, because I'm no fan of the end result, I have to just be honest. And it would have been with the ethos of the whole space. But as I say, hindsight is a beautiful thing. But I really do not think we need to be spending this kind of money on the production of high quality signage. I really don't. It's not justifiable. People look at every penny, every pound we spend, and I wouldn't call Epping Forest District Council one that's loose with money. And you're normally really careful how you spend money. And I personally wouldn't be voting tonight for 15,000 or 19,000 cost of implementation. Yes, we have to pay whatever we're contracted to pay, and presumably the designer was contracted and we have to pay his bill, and that comes within the 19,000. But I would have thought there was much cheaper and reasonable implementation costs. Something done down by a local printing firm, laminated, put on walls. Yes, it's not ideal, but in the current climate, that's what I would be going for, I have to say, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kane.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. In terms of onwards reporting about the activities within the hub, then that will come back through the normal customer services channel, so you will be kept appraised of that. When it comes to the design work done, it would have been very nice to put it out to local schools and colleges, but we had time pressures in place, so unfortunately that didn't enter into the discussions. Not saying had it entered into the discussions, I think it would still have fallen foul of the time constraints. In terms of the design work and the expense thereof, the design work is only a part of the costs involved, and we are paying, as you say, for high quality printing and laminates and stickers, etc. Because many of these are actually going to be on the floor and will wear out very quickly if they're not of a suitable standard. So I think it is, although a sum of money up front, I think it's a worthwhile investment to save us having to do this all again in 12, 18 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a bit old-fashioned, I'm afraid. I don't like the word civic at all. At the meeting, the Stronger Community Select Committee, there was a long discussion. They certainly didn't like the civic, and not everybody liked the civic hub. This is a community area where we've, are going to see a lot of different people or organisations there. The first floor is the civic part of the building. This area should be named the Community Hub, even Epping Forest District Council Community Hub. But certainly not the Civic Hub, but I think it's probably a decision that's already been made. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Sartin.
Thank you, Chairman. I think probably the comments have been made that I would already be making myself. I thought it was quite interesting that Councillor Murray referred to the age areas of the council members and where we might stand with it. The word, just the two words, the civic, really grated on me. The Civic Hub does at least give some impression of what it is there for. It is a hub bringing people together. And the comments around getting local colleges or schools to do some of the design work, obviously, as has been explained, it wasn't possible in this circumstance. But I have been aware of other organisations within the district who are making more use of the talents that we have locally amongst our younger people, and perhaps that is something, if there's any future work that is being looked at for this type of work, to go out and ask that question if it's appropriate and if the timing is right for that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Good points. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman. Coming back on Councillor Murray's comments about an update, I thought it might be useful at this point just to mention, Councillor Murray, I did a drop-in last week where I just called in out of the blue along with Councillor Patel. We had another meeting upstairs. Whilst we were waiting, we were talking to the lady behind the front desk who informed us that it seemed to be a very good success. A lot of people were coming through the doors, and in particular, she said a very destitute man came in this week at his wit's end, didn't know what to do. He was immediately seen by services in the hub, and then he was transferred across to independent services and seen privately. So I'd just like to say that it does appear to be working, and it is getting a lot of use. Thank you.
That's really interesting to hear, isn't it, for all members. The key to this is actually that joined up working. One of the things that's come from the pandemic is the importance of partnership working, and that's what I hope for the hub more than ever before. We've got DWP, we've got Citizens Advice, and we need those partners to be in there. It's not so much in the name to me as is it functioning as a place, and that's what we need to be more about. I'm not really exercised on the name either way. What I'm exercised is on the outcomes, making sure that it works for local people. And that's always my first and foremost on these things. I take on board the really good points that have been made, Sam, from people. And I think if we ever had the opportunity and we had the time to use local students of any type, or young people, or getting ideas from local people as to branding, I think that's a great idea. That's not the opportunity here. And I think the thing that hasn't been drawn out tonight, that this branding has been done in consultation with our partners to make sure that it works for us. And I think that's a key factor. Beauty is always in the eye of the beholder. You're quite correct, Councillor Murray, on that one, and I have sympathy with what you're saying. But we are where we are. We have a set of designs before us, and we have two names before us. The Civic, I must be getting younger because I actually don't dislike the Civic, or at least I'm trying to reverse my age. The Civic Hub, I've got no problems with the Civic Hub. As I heard several times this evening, it does what it says on the box. So I'm going to go to a vote on either one. If it's drawn, I'm going to the audience and the other members for their opinions. So let's start with a vote of the Cabinet on the Civic Hub. Those in favour of the Civic Hub? The Civic or the Civic Hub? Okay. And those for the Civic? Okay. So it's the Civic Hub. Yeah. Annika, you've aged over the past week. Right, okay. So that's a decision on that. Can we take that has been agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, now we get on to item 10, Q4 Budget Monitoring Report 2021. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Chairman. I will try and keep this relatively brief, as these reports have already gone to the Stronger Council scrutiny panel and been through in fairly great detail. I think the key things are in agenda item 10. It's taking us back to the end of March, where, if people actually remember, we're still well and truly locked down. Things have changed a bit since then, and I'll touch on that when we come to the next quarter. The key part is, in spite of all the challenges we experienced through last year, our outturn was only an overspend of just over £150,000 out of that budget of over 18 million. I think given what we had to deal with, to be able to get it to that point is a very significant achievement, and I'd like to thank both the finance officers and actually all the officers of the council for the work they've done trying to keep us on budget. The capital fund, we underspent last year on the general fund, and then in Appendix C, you see the outturn on the housing revenue capital fund, which was also somewhat underspent last year. I guess that shouldn't come as a surprise to us that significant pressure on our ongoing budget spending through the COVID pandemic, but a reduction in what we were expecting to spend on long-term investment in that because we were concentrating on dealing with COVID. Chairman, I'm happy to take questions, but the bottom line is that we've had a really successful last year, and we're working diligently on the accounts to get them to a position where the auditors will be able to prove them. Thank you.
That's very good. Thank you very much. Members of the Cabinet, any questions on this report? Okay, I'll go to Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's only because I want to say something positive, because I don't want to always appear to be negative. I endorse exactly what Councillor Phillips said when I read this report over the weekend. That's exactly the line that I highlighted. I think in no circumstances to get the final outturn as close to the original overall budget, and I'm obviously talking about the general fund, was an absolutely excellent performance, and well done to the leadership of this council and the quality of the officers. I thought that was an excellent result.
Good, thank you very much. Any members of the Cabinet? Again, can I echo those comments that Councillor Murray has just made, and our thanks to the officers, in particular the finance team, who have done a brilliant job at nursing us through the past year. It's not been the easiest of years, as all of us know, and Chris and Andrew and the team have done a brilliant job in getting us to where we are now, so we can move forward. Thank you very much. Members, can we agree the recommendations here? Agreed. Okay, thank you. And then we move on to quarter one on item 11. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Leader. And I would say, as I come into this report, one of the things that myself, Andrew and Chris are working on is getting much more timely management accounting information coming through. So it gives us, as we go through the year, a much better view of where we are. So it doesn't get us to the point where we get to February or March next year and suddenly realise we've got a big hole somewhere that we need to fill. We should be able to look at that in advance. And indeed, that's what this is flagging up now. We have the same set of accounts as we were looking at in the previous report, but we're seeing a budgeted overspend of 1.26 million. That's against our net expenditure of just under 17 million next year, for this year. What we are working through with the various parts of the council is trying to be proactive and making sure that we put pressure on that. And as I've said before, and I'll say again, it's not necessarily a case of just reducing costs. I'm equally happy to get that balance corrected by generating more revenue. And to that extent, I mean, something that we've talked about already tonight in terms of the Civic Hub and the ability to rent out that meeting room downstairs, which was very well used when we had the official opening. We have the ability to make some money out of that, which will help us in terms of our budget. Clearly, carrying on into this year, as I said in the last report, we finished last year in the midst of proper lockdown, so it's no surprise we started this year still in that lockdown, and therefore one of the biggest impacts on our general fund is the forecast overspend of just over £500,000 on our leisure facilities. we are hoping, because we're seeing a good bounce back, that that may not be necessarily as bad as that, but that's where we're predicting it at the moment. Turning to the capital programmes, we're looking at an potential underspend in the general fund capital programme because the drawdown on the Qualis loans is lower than the budget, but that may move on as we go through the year. And the housing revenue account would give us an underspend as well. That tends to be the slippage on the house building programme, although we do have pressures elsewhere in that housing programme. Chairman, I think essentially it's a reasonably secure first quarter, both in terms of the ongoing continuing budgets, but also in the capital programme. It gives us scope over the coming year to make sure that we get hopefully closer than we were last year in terms of the outturn, but I'm happy to take questions.
Members, any questions? Councillor Kane.
Not a question so much as a request for clarity. When you were speaking of the general fund, I think you actually said 1.2 million. I'm sure you meant 0.12 million.
Councillor Phillip.
It's just numbers, isn't it? Yes, Councillor Kane, you're quite right. It wasn't 1.2 million, it was 0.12 million.
That's certainly what Mr. Hartsgrove was thinking behind you as you said that. Okay, any other members of the Cabinet with questions? Okay, Councillor Murray.
I have a question either for the officer or the portfolio holder. Probably with hindsight, I perhaps should have asked in advance, but it's not trying to catch anyone out. It's when I read the report, there was one line in the report that I then couldn't see any further explanation of, and it's the bottom of page 91 and the top of page 92. It said there's some spending pressure on housing repairs, which is not linked to the pandemic. Unless I've missed it, I couldn't see any further explanation on what that spending pressure was. Is anyone able to say anything tonight? I'm quite happy to receive an email if we can't, but I would be interested in what that spending pressure on housing repairs is.
Councillor Phillip.
Leader, yes, thanks. I can hopefully help Councillor Murray there. Over the past number of years, we've had a budget for housing repairs and particularly void repairs. It turns out, as we've gone back and looked at previous years, we have regularly failed to hit that budget and overspent on it significantly. That led at the end of last year to a gap between what we had expected to spend and what we did actually spend. That hasn't changed because the underlying problems were still there. That's one of the things that we're working with our housing colleagues to make sure that we rectify that and actually get a budget that matches what we expect to be spending. Clearly, since we didn't discover that before we set the budget, that flaw is still baked in the budget. Therefore, we have that spending pressure.
It's a very thorough reply. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Any other questions? Anything from yourself, Mr. Hartsgrove? Are you happy with the report? Yep. Okay. Can we agree to recommendations? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 12 is the updated medium-term financial plan. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is the next stage of our budget preparation for next year. We're updating the plan. It runs from 22-23 up to 26-27. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone because I've been saying it for a while now. Next year's budget is going to be a challenge. And that's what this medium-term financial plan calls out. We can see quite clearly that we have a distinct gap between what we think we are going to need to spend and the money that we're going to have coming in to afford it. Now, as we all know, if you don't have the money, you can't spend it. We also have the pressure on our reserves coming close to our low limit of 4 million that we're supposed to have within our reserves. So we cannot, as we did this year, fund that gap out of our reserves. We will therefore be looking to make a significant saving or increased revenue generation to look at how we fill that budget gap. As we go forward in subsequent years, that budget gap which comes down starts to go back up again, and that's called out in the table on page 104, where you can see that for next year we have a gap of in the region of 1.5 million, and it comes down in the subsequent years. But as I mentioned already, with the new waste management contract, we're seeing a gap back up to 1.1 million. It's clearly something that we need to deal with. The good news is that we are working this early enough, and I know my cabinet colleagues are looking with their service directors to find out where they can help us with that pressure. I don't want to come into a situation where I'm saying, right, all the service directorates need to find a saving of 400,000. We need to find a change, but let's do it in as proactive a way as we can to change this as we come towards actually setting the budget. I think the key things are to call out that in the medium-term financial strategy, we do bake in a year-on-year significant council tax rise, looking at next year at the full maximum which we can, which is £5. It's not something I think this cabinet would like to do, but we can't set an unbalanced budget. So it's a challenge to all of us to actually look at the spending and the revenue generation to try and make sure that we can keep the pressure on our residents as low as possible. Chairman, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. That's a good reading of the situation. Members of the Cabinet? Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Phillip, for bringing this report forward. I think it's highlighted some very key points, particularly on how difficult things are going to be coming forward. I think obviously the shows our greater reliance actually on the success of Qualis in order to sustain our frontline services, not just for the next civic year, but thereafter as well. I think also as well the maximising or sweating our assets to generate as much income out of them will also be key moving forward, and also as well as all good organisations should be, having that commercial element is going to be key as well moving forward. I think renting out the space on the upper floor was very good initiative, and congratulate officers on that forward thinking with that respect. We've got difficult decisions to make ahead, and I know that my team have already started to look at the services we provide within my portfolio to see where we can make some savings. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Superb, thank you very much. Councillor Sam Kane.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's going to be a very difficult year, and the one after that, not much better, I don't think. But looking at a projected deficit of 1.5 million and talking about a maximum of £5 on the rates, how much of that 1.5 million would actually be plugged by that £5? And what I'm asking therefore is how much more have we still got to do in terms of saving and increased revenue?
Well, unfortunately, Councillor Kane, that 1.5 million is on the basis that we have already baked in that £5 rise. As it seemed, I remember, I think it's about 400,000 that generates increased in terms of our council tax. So it's not a huge amount when it comes to look at 1.5 million. So that 1.5 million is on top of that. And it's worth saying that there are a whole number of things that are not yet definite in terms of this. So that 1.5 million could easily go up. we've baked in a projected salary rise for staff. I did notice that there was a suggestion from the unions that the pay award should be 10% this coming year. If we look on page 110, you can see that our employees' cost is effectively 24 million. 10%, that would be an extra 2.4 million. That then puts us in a position where we have very difficult choices to make. We can make savings, but I'm not sure that we can make savings of that scale and balance the books.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, to put the portfolio holder's mind at rest on that last point, that's obviously a negotiating ploy from good trade union officials, and I think you'll find that they're settled for a lot less than that. But that's beyond my pay grade. But I don't think they're seriously expecting 10%. That's just a negotiating ploy, and it will be settled at a national level, won't it? I want to ask a question based on Q1, but obviously that's relevant to this issue as well. I should have asked it earlier. So I'll ask that now because it's obviously relevant for the budget going forward. How concerned do we have to be about the stalling of the discussions with the potential tenants? Because one portfolio holder has mentioned it as if it's going ahead, and we're told on page 94 that it isn't. We were hoping to receive money for 21-22, and we're not going to. Are we certain to receive money for 22-23? If I can just ask that first, and then I've got a general point on the item going forward. But, you know, I was a bit concerned when I read that. How serious is the stalling in negotiations, and are we definite to get an income in 22-23? And then if I can come back, Chairman.
Councillor Phillip.
I think somebody once said that the only two certain things are death and taxes. So you're going to forgive me if I don't give you a percentage certainty. There was a delay in the contracting with the potential lessee of the top floor, due primarily to the difficulties that the lessee had not expected between his fit-out plan and the status of the building as a listed building. The likelihood is, and I'm not sure whether it's been signed yet, all the indications are that we are going to sign. The delays to the fit-out have therefore resulted in delaying the start of the payments by 3 months. But to counterbalance that, we're extending the contract by an extra 3 months, so we should still get the 10 years of revenue as we expected.
Thank you for that, Chairman, and thank you for letting me go back to Q1, but that obviously does impact going forward, but we've got that clarified now. So on the actual item, I mean, this is obviously serious. One doesn't want to be alarmist at this stage, but this is, you know, there's red lights all over this. We're going to have some really difficult decisions as a council. I mean, my reading of it is, as a minimum, we're going to have to find 1.5, and it could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less, depending on how much extra revenue we generate and other factors that are almost outside our control. But if we have 1.5 million, and if we're told that our general fund expenditure is in the region of 17 million, you know, 1.5 isn't going to be easy to find. And I understand that it will be a council decision and it will go through the council. I understand that. But I also think politically, and we are all politicians here, albeit at a local level, and the budget in the end will be steered through your group, Chairman, and that's the way it should be. That would happen in any council, whether it's green, blue or yellow. I think there are a few yellow councils left, not very many, but there are a few. When are you, as a group, going to make your decision when there's going to if there is going to have to be something unpalatable. What are your thought processes about when you feel as a group you're going to have that discussion, and then of course it goes through the council? I understand that, but we know the political reality. Have you got the kind of time frame in your mind when those difficult decisions are going to have to be made and then pushed through the council?
Thank you, Leader. I would look at it slightly different, Councillor Murray. I expect to be taking a similar approach to the budget this year, as I think you complimented me on doing last year. We will be coming to the select committees. We will be discussing where it is. I'm flagging this up at this stage, and Cabinet colleagues will know I've mentioned this before, so it's not starting now. The aim is to try and get us to a point, by looking at what we're actually doing, that the decisions we have to make aren't the big 1.5 million decisions that we're looking at here. There are, unfortunately, there are a lot of unknowns still out there. I think we've got a fairly good idea of what those unknowns are, and that there aren't too many unknowns out there. But who knows? I mean, if I'd been sitting here 2 years ago, I wouldn't have predicted a pandemic. Who knows on that side? But what we'll be doing, and what I've asked my colleagues to do, is to look at each of their particular service areas, and just, as you would with your own household expenditure, look at what you're spending. Are the things that you can not spend that money on, or not spend it on it at this point, if that will allow us to maintain services that we're looking to do? Are there services that we are gold plating, which we don't need to gold plate and we can get away with silver plating? Are there things that realistically we should be looking at with a hard stare and saying, are these things that we should be asking our residents to pay for, or are there better ways to do it? So that's what we'll be doing. We'll be looking at it and bringing it back together as a coherent solution. I don't think looking for cuts as a large committee, or even worse, as full council, is a very effective way of doing things. I want to be able to bring forward a budget that is balanced and explain to people what we've had to do to get to that balance. But I'm, as they say, my door is always open. If you think you can spot areas in the council where there's significant wastage that will make a hole in that 1.5 million, let me know. We'll go and look at it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I just want to come back on a couple of points. I know we as a council are actually very good at we get ahead of the game when it comes to renewing particular things like that. At the moment, we are renewing now, looking to procure our insurances at the moment. So obviously we're looking to make savings where possible there, and looking at what our policy protects us for, etc. But if talking about the unknown unknowns, looking at utility costs, am I right in thinking that we did pre-purchase set rates of charge for our utilities?
Councillor Phillip.
Leader, I think I'm going to have to fire that one to Mr. Hargrove.
It is true. We have bought some energy on the forward market, I think is the expression. But unfortunately, I don't have the full details of that. So that's one of the things I'm actually looking at the moment. So it does help, but whether that is the whole solution or not remains to be seen. I suspect we've probably got a rising cost pressure there, but fortunately our premises costs as a whole have reduced significantly as a result of the new civic offices and the sort of separation of the condo building. So it's which helps significantly. So.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, this council's always done really very well with its finances, I must admit, and me just being a layman, I don't understand half of it. And obviously COVID has made a big difference, but I thought, on what we was told, you know, with getting rid of the Condor building and everything else, that was going to bring so much revenue in, and, you know, that we were going to be all right with it, and then we're renting out up there. So, you know, is that not bringing in what we thought it was going to bring in? Because this sounds quite dodgy. You've got to look at the residents. It's easy saying we'll put the council tax up, which we probably will have to, but look at the price of gas and things for residents. So, have you got an answer?
Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I've got several answers for you. And talking about the cost of gas for residents, I think as Councillor Patel was pointing out, we've got the cost of gas for us as well. We've got the need to do a whole lot around there, so there are costs around there. And as I alluded to, the cost of staff is one of our biggest costs. Yes, having the Condor building now available for development, and that's one of the trade-offs we did talk about, is whether we sell it, and that gives us a capital receipt, not a general fund receipt, and how that works out. But the other part is in terms of timing of those results, and that feeding in of income. Clearly, if you've got property that you can let, that can generate income coming in. But until you've knocked a building down and built the things you're going to rent, you don't get that rental income coming in. And that's partly why next year is a particularly difficult time, because of the things coming in at the various times. I would love to be able to come to Council in February, Councillor Lee, and say we don't need all of the council tax rise. That's what we're trying to get to. We are looking at all sorts of ways that we can do things around bringing more money in or cutting our costs. And that was one of the reasons why we seconded our asset team to Qualis for a year, is to look to see if we can actually get more revenue out of those assets to help us with the revenue situation. But that kicked off at the beginning of October, so it's a little early to look for results from that yet. So I think the answer to your question is, yes, we're doing all the right things, but sometimes it's a bit like waiting for your paycheck. If your paycheck hasn't arrived yet, you can't spend it. And just being a council, the paycheck comes at a rather lower frequency than it does into our own pockets.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
I'm sorry, Chairman, that raises another question, and I don't want to be awkward. I didn't know we had seconded our, what was the team? What was the team you said? I wasn't aware that we had seconded our asset team to Qualis. I'm sure it has been reported to members. I would like to be told, obviously not tonight, but I would like to be pointed in the right direction of where that's been reported to members, or even decided by members at a committee. I mean, I obviously do miss things, of course I do, but I wasn't aware of that. And I suppose it is semantics, but it is an important semantic. I thought we were told, I suppose you're going to tell me a secondment is different from a transfer, but that's kind of semantic. We were told that there would be a thorough review of any service before it was transferred to Qualis, and I would have thought that applied to secondment as well, and there certainly hasn't been a review of whether that service should be seconded to Qualis. But I certainly would like to know when the decision was made, because I can't remember reading any papers where that decision was made.
Councillor Phillip.
Chairman, I think it's very unfortunate that Councillor Murray forgets full council. This came forward when we were talking about the Qualis 4-year business plan. And yes, we fully committed that when we were going to, if we were going to transfer services, we would have a fully worked up business case. That is the purpose of this secondment, is to work on that business case to see whether in a Qualis environment we can make significant improvements in our asset management to be able to do things there that we cannot do as a council. But it did come to full council, Chairman. I did mention it when I was talking about it at full council, so it has been through the process. And in fact, I do refer to the fact that they've gone across in my council report, which comes up at full council at the end of this month.
Okay.
Sorry, Chairman, reporting it to members, so it was a portfolio holder decision to second it. So it is important, it was a portfolio holder decision to second it.
Chairman, no, it was a decision of council.
Thank you very much. I must have missed it. Being in a group of one, it's quite easy to miss stuff.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murray. Members, you've got the recommendations before you. Can I agree those recommendations? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, moving onwards then. Item 13, Capital Programme Update. Councillor Phillips, your evening this evening.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I guess if you like, it's the flip side of the medium-term financial strategy, in the same way that when you're looking at the outturns, we look at both the sort of ongoing expenditure and the capital. This is now looking at the capital programme as part of determining our budget proposals for going forward to Cabinet in December, and from then through scrutiny into full council. It calls in the detail of the updated indicative capital programme going forward. It's called out on page 126, so we can actually see that in terms of our capital expenditure, we're predicting to spend just under 108 million between now and the end of 2027 in the general fund programme, and indeed on the housing revenue account, somewhat in excess of 170 million in that time. Clearly, the capital programme for the housing revenue account will be revectored in terms of its spending when my colleague, Councillor Holly Whitbread, brings forward the 40-year business plan. I seem to be saying that for a while now, Councillor Whitbread, and I know it's nearly on its way. But this is where we're coming from. I think one thing I would point out on page 129, Appendix A, is the amount of capital growth items that we're looking at for the ICT strategy. That is something that we obviously need to consider seriously as a cabinet, not least because the advances in ICT are what allows us to work in a much more modern way. But we need to make sure that we're getting value for money.
Absolutely. Okay, Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Just a note on the HRA business plan, I have got a meeting with Deborah this week, and hopefully we'll have something for you in the coming days. Thank you.
Okay, any other members? All remarkably quiet. Okay, in that case, can I take those as this has been agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the end of the meeting. There's no reason to exclude the public and press. No any other business. Thank you all very much for your time this evening.